shadows and light. In a village nestled between the arms of two towering mountains, there lived a young woman named Alara. The village of Mirrorthorn was a place where shadows lingered longer than the daylight, where the sun was a rare visitor, and the nights stretched on, filled with whispers carried by the wind. The mountains cast their shadows over the village, giving it an eerie yet enchanting aura, as if the village itself was suspended between two worlds. Alara had always been different. While others in the village were content with their lives in the shadows, she longed for the light. She would spend hours at the edge of the village, staring at the peaks that blocked the sun's rays, wondering what lay beyond. Her grandmother used to tell her stories of a time when the sun bathed the village in light and warmth, a time before the mountains grew taller and swallowed the sky. Why did the mountains grow? Alara had once asked as a child. Her grandmother's eyes had grown distant, lost in memories. The mountains grew because the village forgot how to dream, she replied. They let fear take root in their hearts, and the shadows fed on that fear, growing taller and taller until they blotted out the sun. Alara never forgot those words. They haunted her, nudging her every time she felt the chill of the shadows. She often wondered if there was a way to bring back the light, to make the mountains shrink and allow the sun to return. But how could she, one person, fight against something so vast and ancient? One day, while exploring the forest at the base of the mountains, Alara stumbled upon an old, forgotten path. Overgrown with moss and vines, it was nearly invisible, but something in her heart told her to follow it. The path wound its way up the mountain, steep and treacherous, but Alara was determined. She climbed higher and higher, her breath growing ragged, but the thought of the light kept her going. After hours of climbing, she reached a plateau. There, she found a small, weathered cottage, seemingly abandoned for years. As she approached, the door creaked open on its own. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and old wood. The walls were lined with shelves filled with strange artifacts, dusty tomes, and vials of colorful liquids. In the center of the room sat an old woman, her eyes closed as if in meditation. Alara hesitated, but then gathered her courage and spoke. "I've come seeking a way to bring back the light to my village." The old woman opened her eyes, revealing pupils that shimmered like molten gold. "Ah, the light seeker," she murmured. "I've been expecting you." "You have?" Alara asked, surprised. The woman nodded. "For centuries, I have waited for someone like you, someone with the courage to challenge the shadows. But know this, child, the journey ahead is not an easy one. The shadows have grown strong, and they will not relinquish their hold on the village without a fight." Alara felt a shiver run down her spine, but she squared her shoulders. "I'm not afraid," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. The old woman smiled faintly. "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to face it. If you wish to bring back the light, you must first confront the darkness within yourself." Alara frowned. "What do you mean?" The woman gestured to a mirror on the wall, its surface tarnished and dull. "Look into the mirror, and you will see the shadows that dwell in your heart. Only by facing them can you hope to overcome the shadows that surround your village." Hesitantly, Alara stepped up to the mirror. As she gazed into it, the reflection wavered, and she saw herself not as she was, but as she feared she might become. Lost, consumed by doubt, and swallowed by the shadows. Her deepest insecurities and fears played out before her eyes, each one more painful than the last. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she wanted to look away, but the old woman's voice stopped her. "Do not turn away, child. Embrace the darkness, for only then can you find the light." Alara took a deep breath and forced herself to keep watching. She saw herself struggling, failing, and giving in to despair. But then, in the midst of the darkness, she noticed something, a tiny spark of light. It flickered weakly, but it was there, a small flame that refused to be extinguished. That light, the old woman said, is your hope, your will to fight. It is small now, but if you nurture it, it will grow strong enough to banish the shadows. Alara nodded, wiping her tears away. "How do I make it grow?" "By facing your fears," the woman replied. By believing in yourself, even when the darkness threatens to overwhelm you. The light will grow with every act of courage, every step you take towards your goal. With newfound determination, Alara thanked the old woman and left the cottage. She knew what she had to do now. She had to confront the shadows within the village, to inspire the people to believe in the light once more. As she descended the mountain, the path seemed less treacherous, the shadows less daunting. She reached the village just as the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the ground. The villagers were going about their evening routines, their faces weary and resigned to the darkness. Alara stood in the center of the village and called out to them, "My friends, I have seen the light, and I know it can return to us, but we must fight for it together." The villagers paused, looking at her with confusion and doubt. "The light is gone, Alara," one of them said. "The mountains have taken it. There's nothing we can do." "No," Alara said firmly. "The light is still within us. It's in our hearts, in our hopes and dreams. We've let the shadows take over because we've forgotten how to believe in ourselves. But if we stand together, we can bring the light back." Her words stirred something within the villagers, a faint memory of a time when they were not so afraid. Slowly, one by one, they began to gather around her, their eyes filled with a spark of hope. Alara led them to the edge of the village, where the shadows were darkest. "Close your eyes," she instructed, "and think of the light, of the warmth and joy it brings. Hold on to that thought and don't let go." As they did so, the shadows seemed to writhe and twist, as if agitated by the villagers' collective will. Alara could feel the light within her growing stronger, fueled by the hope of those around her. She opened her eyes and saw the first rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds, pushing back the shadows. The villagers gasped in awe as the light grew brighter, illuminating the village for the first time in years. The mountains, once so imposing, seemed to shrink slightly, their shadows retreating as the sun reclaimed its rightful place in the sky. Tears of joy streamed down Alara's face as she realized that they had done it. They had brought back the light. The village of Mirathorn was no longer a place of perpetual shadow, but a place where light and darkness coexisted in harmony. The villagers celebrated, their spirits lifted by the return of the sun. They thanked Alara for her courage and determination, for reminding them of the power they held within themselves. And from that day forward, the village thrived, bathed in the warm glow of the sun. As for Alara, she continued to explore the mountains and the world beyond, always seeking new ways to bring light to places shrouded in darkness. She knew that the shadows would never be completely gone, but as long as there was even a single spark,